effects of Idalia are on the path to make sure that they are staying safe. If you're experiencing hurricane winds, storm surge, and flooding, don't venture outside. Listen to warnings of local officials and shelter in place. Do not enter floodwaters since there can be chemicals and debris. If you are in the projected path of the hurricane, please remain alert, closely monitoring any changes to its path. Listen to local and state officials for guidance and evacuation notices, and finish your preparedness. The President and our entire administration are committed to supporting all communities impacted by the hurricane. We will be with you every step of the way, as we have been when we have to deal with these types of disastrous situation, hurricanes, extreme weather. This is an administration that will be with this community from before it started, as you all know, from what you heard from the President earlier this week, and also the administrator after it hits, and we will be there until they are able to rebuild. With that, Administrator Criswell, welcome back.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thanks, Corrine, and I'll just jump right in. I did just have an opportunity to brief the President on our current response efforts for Hurricane Idalia, which, as all of you know, made landfall early this morning. While we were in there, the President contacted Governor DeSantis to let him know that the federal family continues to be there to support him. The governor expressed that all of his needs are met currently. The President reiterated that if anything is needed from the federal government, we will be able to support, and we have over 1,000 personnel currently deployed, prepared to support not just Florida, but all of our states that are in the path as needed. While I was in there, the President also directed me to travel immediately into the area, and I will be traveling later this afternoon to join Governor DeSantis tomorrow to do assessments and see firsthand what the impacts from this storm are. And I can be able to report back to the President exactly what I see, what we think the needs might be, and where the federal family can continue to assist. Before I touch more on Hurricane Idalia, I also want to address the second reason that I am here at the White House today. Today, I will also join President Biden alongside his cabinet and agency officials who are supporting the response and the recovery efforts on the ground in Hawaii as we continue to help the people of Maui rebuild and recover over the long term. This whole of government approach is what is needed to get the right resources to the people of Maui, the resources and the assistance that they need and that they deserve. Now back a little bit to what we know so far on Hurricane Idalia. While it is still too soon to assess the total damages, we know that the storm made landfall as a Category 3, which means over 120-mile-per-hour winds and up to 10 inches of rain in some areas. Peak storm surge in some places along the coast. It has peaked right now, but it could surpass once they measure over 15 feet of storm surge. And we'll get exact numbers as they're able to go in and assess what the total storm surge was. And in fact, Idalia is the strongest storm to hit this part of Florida, to make landfall in this part of Florida in over 100 years. But FEMA and the entire Biden-Harris administration, we were prepared and we were ready to support the needs of this storm. As I mentioned, we have actually over 1,500 federal responders that are on the ground in the affected area. This includes over 300 personnel from FEMA, as well as over 500 urban search and rescue personnel ready to support any of the state's requests. As of 7:30 this morning, and I know these numbers are dynamic and fluid, but as of 7:30 this morning, there are nearly 300,000 customer outages for power in Florida, and we do expect those numbers to continue to rise as the storm passes through and goes into Georgia, and we'll see power outage numbers for Georgia, South Carolina, and perhaps North Carolina. Our partners at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are pre-positioned to support power restoration, and they have over 30 generators that are pre-staged. Additionally, the utilities are preparing for storm impacts, including pre-staging crews and equipment outside of the projected storm track. And the state anticipates a total of about 30,000 to 40,000 linemen in Florida to begin to assist in the power restoration efforts. People that are still in the storm's path, however, as you heard from Corrine, they should not venture out into the storm and remain sheltering in place if your local officials are telling you to do so. However, if you are in trouble and you need immediate assistance, please call 911. As you do go out, do not wade in the water. Do not drive through flooded roads and streets. Just remember, turn around, don't drown. Unfortunately, we see so many fatalities after the storm passes. We want to make sure that everybody is taking the right precautions to keep themselves safe. And as always, please continue to listen to your local officials as this storm continues to pass over Georgia currently and into South Carolina. Please check on your friends and your family and your loved ones, especially older adults and people living with disabilities, to see if they have any needs. In closing, I just want to remind people that this is still very much an active situation. Remnants of the storm are still affecting Florida as we speak. The storm is over Georgia and moving into South Carolina. People there and in the Carolinas will continue to experience impacts throughout the day today and possibly into the weekend. Again, FEMA is well postured with our federal partners to support Floridians during this time of need and stands ready to support other affected states as needed. With that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Administrator, what are you most concerned about over the next day or two, since you just said it's too early right now to assess the extent of damage in Florida?
Yeah, my biggest concern is those people who chose not to evacuate. And I know that our local first responders, the heroes that are out there in those local communities, are doing an amazing job already of going into the areas where people did not evacuate and helping to get them to safety. I think that is our priority through the day today, is to make sure that everybody is safe after this storm has passed. As we go into the next few days, we're going to want to assess what the total amount of damage is and see what immediate needs need to be put forth in order to help support and start the recovery process.
Administrator Criswell, thank you so much. Could you just take us a little bit into that briefing that you had with the President today? What is he most concerned about? What was he most focused on? Any other direction that he gave to you other than to fly down to Florida? And then secondly, you said that Governor DeSantis is satisfied with the federal response, doesn't need anything additional. Was there anything else discussed on that call?
Yeah, the President's main concern is making sure that we are bringing everything that we have in to support these states as they're having immediate response and life-saving needs or beginning to start their assessment and their recovery process. I think it's incredibly important that our governors know that we are ready and postured to bring in all federal resources to support any of their life-saving and their life-sustaining needs in the very near future. The conversation with Governor DeSantis was that, reiterating the fact that we already have over 1,500 personnel there in the area to be able to support, and the governor currently has no unmet needs, but as we begin to assess, right, as the governor assesses and as I get on the ground tomorrow to assess, we'll see what additional needs might be there and if any of those resources need to be employed or we need to move more into the area.
Has the President spoken yet with the governors of Georgia or South Carolina as well, or any plans for that to happen?
I believe he was preparing to contact them after I left so I could come to this briefing.
Good.
Thank you. Administrator, to what extent do you attribute climate change as a cause of this storm and the other weather events that we're seeing over the last weeks and months?
Yeah, I'm not going to attribute the cause of the storm, but what I can say is that we are seeing an increase in the number of severe weather events. And what we saw with this storm, as we have seen with several of our hurricanes over the last few years, is that they are intensifying more rapidly due to the elevated heat of the water temperature in the Gulf or in the Pacific, or whether it's in the Atlantic. These storms are intensifying so fast that our local emergency management officials have less time to warn and evacuate and get people to safety. This is something that we have to take into consideration as we build our preparedness plans, as our local communities build their preparedness plans on how they're going to communicate and prepare their communities for the types of storms that they're going to face in the future.
Secondly, more specifically on this storm, do you have any sense, or is it too early now to say what the cost of recovery will require or will be?
Yeah, it's far too early to even estimate what the cost is. It's still unsafe in many parts to even go out. That's what's going to happen over the next several days, is to really get a good understanding, an initial estimate of what we think the costs will be and what the amount of impact to these communities has been.
Just to follow on that, with what you've seen so far, how long